a strange scene indeed. If one goes up Mount Tabor, and it is a steep climb, one does feel apart from the world, and one notices a plaque on the wall of one of the sacred buildings indicating that an unbroken tradition has it that not only the Transfiguration took place there, but also the commissioning of the disciples, the apostles, 3 of which are here, after this exodus of which this speaks. We have the fact that these, now, one is a prophet and the other is the lawgiver. The law and the prophets, therefore, the whole of the preparation, what they say is to accomplish what? The Exodus, his Exodus. Therefore, it's the language in which they've been operating. And that he is to go back there and meet them, this time in glory. That same glory which these 3 are seeing right now. The word Exodus comes from ex, out of, and odos, way. It's the way out. The Lord is leading right now his people out. We need to be led out of our bondage, and Lent is a time to look into that. If we're honest, we're all a bit addicted. Right now, our bondage could be subtle. Some years ago, I was with some good simple travellers in their house, celebrating Holy Mass quietly with them. They were young, and one of them said of her young cousin that she had some Lents ago given up for Lent what's up, and 3 years down the line she had never got back onto it, and she said this: since I got off that, I got my family back. Beware of modern bondages. I have noticed that actually people are always talking about what has just been communicated to them, passed on to them. It takes a lot of time to catch up with all that they must absolutely be sent. But do we have to have that bondage? It's the first generation of those who have these modern toys, and where children not able yet to handle them. We are being handled by them. Now Lent is a time to go on to a place apart like Tabor, mentally, even physically, and ask, now my time is going. Is it going the right way before it goes? Because actually a day passed on these modern forms of slavery, they are not noticed as they pass. You spend 3 hours in manual work in a field, you will notice the time passing. And so those who do this all their life will not notice their life passing. And they will not either be deeply in themselves because they're in other people. They've lost control. So Lent is a time when we need some place. Now we can't do it right now because of the lockdown. It was a time when retreats used to happen. But if we are really concerned about the quality of our life, we will in some shape or form do it ourselves. All I can say from experience is that the going and living in a place apart from the world, with no contact with the world, is vastly, vastly different. Because, why? One can do this very thing with which the Gospel ends. Listen to Him. Psychologically, we can't listen to 2 things at the same time. Notice what happens when you're trying to follow something on a recorded talk and somebody comes in. Your mind is split and it can't do it properly. So it is that if we want really to hear that voice, because it's quiet, we have to be doubly quiet ourselves. Now, the Gospel also talks about light. In the Eastern tradition, the Eastern Orthodox tradition, light is very important. Go into an Eastern Orthodox church and you will be hit by glory. They see it as a foretaste of heaven. The otherness, the holy doors, lights, icons, mystery. Go into a Roman Catholic church and you will be hit normally by the crucifix. It's not either or, but it's both and. But they do have this notion of precisely what Tabor indicates. It's frightfully awful in the correct sense of awe. And we need to recuperate that. We have become too casual before that light. But light also operates on the soul. I remember talking to Breda Laffey years ago. She is well-known, charismatic in Ireland, still functioning. And she was saying how when she was praying over people, she would be given to understand immediately whether the soul was in what? Light or darkness. And from there already she could see where she had to go when addressing them. Light, therefore, is also the light of grace. And people out there on this planet are majorly not in the light. And right now, old Nick is having a field day because they can't get it easily. It's not at all the same sitting before a goggle box and watching what we're doing right now physically. There are many different things going on here which don't happen on a screen. One is, the closer we come to the altar, the closer we come to this invisible, huge Shekinah cloud of angels. We don't know how many are there, and they are, as we're right now, huddling there right next to the altar, and when it comes to the Eucharistic prayer, as it were, they're shuffling and saying, he's coming, he's there! They can see what we can't see. But we need to live by faith and behave as though we saw it. Some saints have seen it. There was one little child, not your age, thanks for reading, who was in church on the feast of her guardian angel. I think her name was Veronica. And it was a school mass in America, and they were well catechized. It was the school college chapel. And this particular child had a special devotion to her guardian angel. And it happened to be the feast of the 2nd of October, which is their feast. And the Lord gave her a special grace. When her best friend was next to her in the chapel, she said accidentally to her, "Don't sit there, my guardian angel's there." And on it went, but as the celebration started, the Lord opened the eyes of the child to see. And she could see all the guardian angels of the other children, and how they were changing their behaviour as time went on in the celebration. When it came to the offertory, things started to happen. And she could see that some children had more to offer than others. Some are absent mentally, some are not in great light. But the attention that we give is our presence to the presence. Remember that now. We gain more grace if we're present mentally. And when it came to the consecration, it all started to happen. The angels there started to not only look towards, but somehow move towards that centre of it all. And there was a huge cloud of angels of all kinds, and they were very different from each other. Some had wings, some didn't, and they all were different because the angels are individual. But not only that, she was given to see a huge, powerful angel right next to the priest, protecting and shielding. Any idea who it might be? St. Michael. That's why I have St. Michael in the other chapel there, right next to the Blessed Sacrament, and as we go in, because he is the one who protects the Blessed Sacrament. There are stories about that happening, by the way. But then she also saw, just behind the priest at the consecration, our Blessed Lady. Now, she wasn't actually front stage, because that was by its very nature the priest's place at that point. Our Lady can't consecrate, and she was indicating that by her position, but she was somehow mystically linked with the celebration. One can see why. The body and the blood came from her, body and blood. And that would indicate why, for instance, when the statue at Civitavecchia near Rome wept, famously, and actually in the own bishop's hands, when they analysed the blood, it was male blood, because she was weeping for the abuse of the blood of her divine Son. And she hurts when that happens. She feels and sees when that happens. And it happens because we've forgotten what we're doing. And we've forgotten what we're doing because we've taken away the props and the shields. The more one chips away at the glory of the Lord on earth, the more we forget, the less we are reminded, and we think we're angels ourselves without the aids that the body needs. It just doesn't work. And by the way, that applies too to the whole victory that Old Nick has had in attacking the sacred in these last 50 years. One little bit more each time. Getting to the point now that people find it very hard to receive Holy Communion on the tongue. You give a child at his or her first communion, Holy Communion on the tongue, kneeling, it gives one message. Give the child at its first encounter with heaven, communion in the hand, standing, it gives another message. Because a child needs to see, and we just don't give them the fullness of the visual message anymore. So what is it for them? Blessed bread. They hardly know what they're doing. That's what we're at. And this has come out in exorcism. It's old Nick. He hates the sacred, and he wants us to do the same. So on this day, brethren, let us also go up Mount Tabor, and remember that this was given to the disciples, 3 of them, before Calvary, because the Lord knew that to see him streaming with blood, reduced to a worm, would give them also a message that he was only a man. To give to these 3 key disciples the vision of the glory was to prepare them. There is more going on, my friends, at this altar than meets the eye. This also is Tabor.